I want to thank you for inviting me to come and to speak about our work with the campus ministry in Athens, Ohio. This congregation will always have a special place in my heart, and I want to thank you not only from the campus ministry side of it, but personally for all that you've done for me over the years in developing me as a Christian. So I do want to speak about the campus ministry a little bit tonight, but I also want to talk about a challenge that we all face as Christians. So it's kind of a two-part message. For those of you who aren't familiar of what a campus ministry is, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's almost a mission field, a ministry to college campuses, and we've got college campus and campus ministry in Athens, Ohio. There are two different types of campus ministries. There is the parachurch model of a campus ministry, and there's the ministry out of a local church. The difference between that is a parachurch is kind of an independent organization that works separate from a local church. It operates independently, not a particular denomination, but interdenominational. And these act more as nonprofit organizations, and there's complete autonomy with them. Sometimes they're national, sometimes they're international, and because of that status, they have access to different grants and things like that. They receive finances from private donors. But again, they never really interweave with a local congregation, a local church. And so that's the parachurch model of campus ministry. The other model of campus ministry, like I said, is a derivation of the local church. It's a ministry of a local church. And that's what we are at Light for Christ. We're based out of the Blackburn Hill Church of Christ in Athens. And we receive our support from individuals and congregations like Six in Washington. And because of that, it's hard to compete sometimes with these parachurches because they're, like I said, international organizations. So I left some pamphlets out in the foyer on a table. If you're interested in supporting the campus ministry, we definitely welcome that support. And I got that out of the way. So a little bit more about the campus ministry. It started in the late 80s at Ohio University because there was a growing number of students, and we realized that it was prime territory to plant a campus ministry. Right now, there's just under 30,000 students at Ohio University, and so the audience is there. And so in the late 80s, they decided that they would create a campus ministry, the local church there, and so they hired a campus minister, and we've been working it ever since. So that's a little bit of the history of the campus ministry. One of the reasons that campus ministry is such an important mission field is because of its connection to society, its placement there. There's a lot of strategy that goes in placing a mission field in a college campus. Like I said, there's about 30,000 souls there, so in and of itself, the opportunities are there. But more than that, there's international students. People are from around the country and from around the world who attend at college campuses and universities. And so if we can plant the gospel in these different places, then they'll take it back to wherever they're from and grow from there. They're not just souls from all over the place. They're college students, and so there's a likelihood for them to go into different fields. So there are different career fields that the gospel can then reach. Oftentimes leadership positions are a result of college education, and so there's really this dissemination of the gospel by planning a campus ministry at a university. In theory, this is a very fruitful mission field, and potentially has the capability to transform much of the world. The problem is college towns, and in particular Athens, are not very religiously inclined. There was a poll done that said that 80% of residents in Athens, Ohio, have no religious affiliation. This is a growing phenomenon in the U.S., a lot of times termed religious nuns. They just don't have any sort of religious affiliation. And 80% of people, of the whole population, has that statistic, no religious affiliation. So that sounds high, but it sounds even higher when you put it into perspective. The national average for religious nuns is 23%. So it's over 3 times the national average. In comparison, China, which is a self-professed atheistic country, has only a 52% rate of irreligion. So there's a major challenge there. This is the field that we're working in Athens. But despite the odds, our Light for Christ has had a successful run over the years. There's been hundreds of students that have been through that campus ministry, several here, and at least 9 alumni, including myself, that are now part of, engaged in a full-time ministry. So it has been a fruitful work, despite that high statistic of lack of religion. So in terms of what we do as a campus ministry, one of our big staples is a midweek Bible study that we have on campus. Amid the stress of school and just the college age in general, where people are trying to find themselves, what they value, what they want to do with the rest of their life, what relationships they want to have. This midweek Bible study allows for a time slot for students to really focus on the things that matter, the spiritual things. And so typically on Thursdays we have a on-campus Bible study. We're a registered campus organization, so we have access to different facilities on campus. And that's allowed us to reach out more to the unchurched population. We've been pushing a lot more since we're a student organization. We've been able to increase our outreach with flyers and with involvement fairs and social media and things like that. And it's been pretty successful. We've had about 11 students from outside of our fellowship come and study the Bible with us, and it gives us a chance to really just plant the seed of the gospel. And so that's been great. We also really try and stress the importance of Christian relationships. We're all social creatures, and this really comes to the surface during college. People will develop relationships, whether it's in a bar or some sort of Greek life or some club or the church. They will find these relationships. And so obviously we want to provide that environment within the church. And so, we do different things, fellowship activities, movies, bowling, board games, pumpkin carving, just different things like that to build relationships between Christians. That's one of the biggest components in retention within the church, is having these strong relationships between people and having that group of friends to really anchor you in the church. So we do things like that. We've been on the last 2 falls. We go to Pennsboro, West Virginia, to a fall college retreat at the West Virginia Christian Youth Camp grounds there with our sister campus ministries at OSU and Marshall and WVU. So that gives us an opportunity to meet with other students and Christians and get to know one another. Last spring, we also went to the Midwestern Children's Home and helped volunteer there. So that adds the important service element of the design of the church into our organization. So we really try to get a comprehensive view of the church. When you look at Acts chapter 2, at the church there, you see worship, you see knowledge, you see service, and you see fellowship. And we really want to try and touch on all those aspects of a healthy church. These are just some of the activities that we do. Every year, one of the unique challenges to campus ministry is that every year there's an influx of people and a deflux of people. So the group makeup and the strengths and weaknesses are always shifting. And so it seems like just as soon as we get a strong group, they graduate and we have to start over again. So it's really a seed planting ministry. We don't always get to see the fruits of that labor while they're there in that 4 years, but it's good. When I was in the campus ministry as a student, we had about 15 people, very strong, and I grew a lot from it personally. This year, and especially this upcoming semester, we've only got a handful of students, so there's different challenges with that. There's definitely an ebb and flow to that, and sometimes I would like to have more students there, but on the other hand, it gives you an opportunity to really get to know the students that are there and have a better relationship with them and grow with them. So I mentioned that on top of talking about the campus ministry, I wanted to talk about another challenge that is not unique to campus ministry, but one that as Christians we all face. And that's the challenge of engaging a foreign culture. And when we talk about engaging a foreign culture, we're not necessarily talking about crossing foreign boundaries, national borders, although there are several hundred international students at OU, and with that come different cultures. But what we're talking about tonight is post-Christian culture. And that's what we find ourselves in today. So what do I mean by a post-Christian culture? As I'm sure many of you know, traditionally the United States has been a largely Christian society. And by that, we don't necessarily mean that they're textbook Christians, but regardless of whether or not you believe in the Bible, you have a lot of the understanding and the background of Judeo-Christian morals, and you know the characters in the Bible and things like that. And up until recently, this is the culture that we've grew up in. But more and more, the culture around us is changing, and it's leaning more towards secularism, away from those Judeo-Christian beliefs. Not only do they not necessarily believe the Bible is truth, they don't necessarily believe there is such a thing as truth. And so with that different cultural and worldly mindset, there's different challenges that we have in engaging this foreign culture. Now, one of the detriments, I think, of having a quote-unquote Christian society is that we become dependent on it, and we don't know how to navigate in different cultures. And so I see this as something that I struggle with, and I notice a lot of people struggle with, is this idea of how to engage a foreign culture. So as we're talking about that, I want us to notice three facts. The first fact is that all cultures need the gospel. This is what Jesus said in Mark 16:15. This is the Great Commission. Jesus says, "Go into all the world and proclaim the gospel to the whole creation." So the first thing we need to understand is that the gospel needs to go to all the world, all cultures, regardless of how close or far away they are from what we would generally think of as a Christian culture. The second fact we need to realize is that the gospel can penetrate any culture. The writer of Hebrews says, "For the word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing to the division of the soul and of the spirit, of joints and of marrow, and discerning the thoughts and intentions of the heart." This belief that the gospel is sharper than a two-edged sword and not only needs to be disseminated to all the world, but has the power to be disseminated into all the world, is what helped Christianity spread to the ends of the earth. And so we need to realize this. Finally, we need to realize that the gospel must be communicated differently within each culture. This is what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 9:22. "To the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some." So, with the remaining time, I want to look at these three principles, and I want to look at how Paul utilizes them when he faces a foreign culture, and then look at some application for our lives. So, our text tonight is going to be from Acts 17, starting in verse 16. So if you have your Bibles and want to turn there. It says, "Now while Paul was waiting for them in Athens, his spirit was provoked within him as he saw the city was full of idols." So Paul is waiting for Silas and Timothy, and he's waiting in Athens, Greece, not Ohio. I enjoy the parallel, though. So he's waiting there for them. And while he's waiting, it says his spirit was provoked within him as he saw that the city was full of idols. Athens, Greece was infamous for how many idols it had. Petronius, a writer and a contemporary of Nero in the 1st century, is famous for saying, "In our neighborhood, there are so many gods that it's easier to meet one than it is to find a man." So it's easier to stumble upon a foreign god than it is to meet a person in Athens, Greece. So we see that Paul is provoked in his spirit by the amount of idolatry that he sees around him. And there's really no better description for Athens, Ohio, or the United States, anywhere in our culture. We look around and we just see idols everywhere. They take different forms than they did back then, but they're no less prominent. But notice that when Paul sees these idols, he's provoked in his spirit. Likewise, it ought to provoke us and our spirits when we look around and we see idols everywhere. So he's provoked in spirit, but there's a right and a wrong way to respond to this provocation. The wrong way is condemning them. If you remember when Jesus was rejected in Samaria, James and John came to him and asked him, "Do you want us to call down fire from heaven and consume these people because they rejected you?" If you remember Jesus' response, he said, "The Son of Man didn't come to destroy men's lives, but to save them." And so we get two different responses to being provoked in our spirit when we see idols around us. The improper response is to antagonize them, to respond with wrath. The proper way, as Jesus says, is to seek to save them, right? And that's what Jesus tried to do during his ministry, and that's what we see Paul doing here. So this is the first point in action. Paul realizes that all cultures need the gospel. So the first thing Paul does is in Acts 17, first part of verse 17. It says, "So he reasoned in the synagogues with the Jews and the devout persons." So we see this as Paul's customs. When he's going on his missionary journeys, he almost always goes to the synagogues first. He's seeking out the people who have a similar background as he does. Him having a Jewish background and studying under the feet of Gamaliel and being on his way to being part of the Sanhedrin, he was familiar with the Jewish culture and with the Jewish belief systems, and so he goes there first, and that's a wise move on Paul's part because he can bolster support there. So that's the first thing he does, but it's important to note that Paul isn't content with only reaching the Jews. He realizes that the gospel is for everyone. And in fact, the Jews were a minority in Athens, Greece, and so he wants to reach the larger masses. So we see in the latter part of verse 17, he also reasons in the marketplace every day with those who happen to be there. So having reached his own people, the Jews and their culture, he goes to the marketplace. And when we think about a marketplace, it's not exactly like a Walmart or a Kroger or anything like that in our modern conception. But a marketplace back then was a Greek agora, and it was a central hub of all kinds of different public life. There was business there, there were politics, commerce, religion, anything cultural. It was the cultural epicenter of the city, was this Greek marketplace. And so Paul goes there with his message of the gospel. So we can think of different modern parallels. In Athens, it's the uptown area or different coffee shops or even social media. The idea is that if you want to reach people, you have to go to the people. And that's a struggle for us sometimes, especially in a culture that we're uncomfortable with, that's foreign to us, and that we even disagree with. We still realize that we need to be amongst them. This is what Jesus prayed to the Father in the garden. I don't pray that you take them out of the world, but that you sanctify them. And so Paul is in the world, but not of the world. And so he goes to the marketplace with his message, and he engages the foreign culture there. So he not only believes that everyone needs the gospel, but the fact that he's going to the marketplace with the Gentiles preaching the gospel tells us that he believes it has the power to penetrate any culture. And as we'll see, it does. Moving on to verse 18, it says, "Some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers also conversed with him, and some said, 'What does this babbler wish to say?' Others said, 'He seems to be a preacher of foreign divinities, because he was speaking of Jesus and the resurrection.' And they took him and brought him to the Areopagus, saying, 'May we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting?' So he starts in the marketplace, and he gets the people's attention there. He goes to where the people are, and because of that, they're at least curious about the message that he has. So they bring him to Mars Hill, or the Areopagus. The Areopagus is a place where philosophers and teachers and all kinds of intellectuals spent time, he would say, doing nothing except telling or hearing something new. We can definitely see a parallel between that and the college campus. Learning new things, teaching new things constantly. So Paul's invited to the Areopagus, and they ask him about what he's teaching. And we'll look at how Paul engages this culture. starting in verse 22, it says, "So Paul, standing in the midst of the Areopagus, said, Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription, The unknown God. What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it, being the Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and boundaries of the dwelling place, that they should seek God and perhaps feel their way towards him and find him. Yet he is actually not far from each one of us." So, Paul goes on to engage the people in conversation. He says, as I went along, I noticed that you're a really religious people. And what he means by that is you worship a lot of things. Because you're so religious that I even found an altar to the unknown God. You worship so many things that there's something, there's an altar to that which you don't even know if it exists. And this altar to the unknown God wasn't a specific deity, but it was an altar to a God that they had missed, and they wanted to cover their bases. And so they made this altar to the unknown God to heed any that they may have missed. So we see that the Greeks, by having this altar to the unknown God and having an unknown God, and the fact that they spent all day telling and hearing new things, we see that they're not satisfied with their belief system, with that aspect of their culture. If they were satisfied with the pantheon of gods they had, there wouldn't be this altar to the unknown God. If they were satisfied with the teachings and philosophies they had, they wouldn't continue to tell and hear new ones. So we see that they're seeking for something. And Paul picked up on this, the fact that they're seeking something. And he addresses that. He says, I'm going to make known to you what's unknown. When we talk about when we talk about our modern idols and culture, they said it's not so much these mythological gods, but the things that we put in our lives to try to fill this void that we have, and we're never satisfied with them. And so we'll move on to different things to keep trying to fill this void that, in reality, our unknown God, which is God himself. I put a few up here that I noticed at Athens in particular. Despite the 80% rate of religion, I would say that Athens, Ohio is a pretty religious place, owing to the fact that they worship a lot of things. But these are the unknown gods that we have in our culture. We realize that we're seeking this unknown God, but we are. I'll see people on campus, and I know that they're seeking the peace that only God can provide, but they're looking for it in illicit drugs. Protesting is huge in Athens. Everything's about protesting. So I realize that the thing that they're seeking for is the justice that only God can provide. And so the unknown God to them is Jehovah, the justice that only He can provide, but they're looking for it in the wrong places. They want joy that only God can provide, so they turn to sex and alcohol to try and fill that void that only God can fill. Same with academia. They want the knowledge and the wisdom that only God can provide. They want answers, and worshiping these unknown is trying to find that. So it's important that we're sensitive to this and aware of this when we interact with people looking for what they're searching for, because everybody's worshiping something. We need to tune in and find out what they're distributing the worship of God to, and answer that and make unknown God known to them. I love how Paul reaches them in their culture. Starting in verse 28, it says, "For in him we live and move and have our being, as even some of your own poets have said. For we are indeed his offspring." So we see here Paul not quoting anything from the Old Testament. Actually, he never mentions anything by name that's found in the Old Testament. And we realize the reason he does that is because he's talking to Gentiles and not to Jewish audiences. And so, while he doesn't adapt the message, he adapts the method of conveying the gospel to different cultures. And that's something that, as we're faced with this emerging secular culture, it's important for us to embrace the realization that the beliefs that we have, people aren't always familiar with those concepts. So we have to go about it a little differently. Of course, still reaching them with the gospel, but meeting them where they are. And I really think it's a lost art, meeting people where they are and teaching them there. But we see Paul quoting scholars debate whether it's one or two different poets here, these Greek poets. But he's familiar enough with the culture that he's able to quote them. And I think that's notable that we immerse ourselves, whether we agree with it or not, we immerse ourselves in foreign cultures enough that we can navigate around in that. He takes away the Jewish language. He doesn't even refer to the Messiah. He says, "A man that God has appointed." They do believe in God, so mentions God, but they don't have any concept of God's anointed Messiah. So it says, "Man appointed by God." So we can take some cues from this on how to discuss the gospel with people who don't have the same Christian background as we do. But also notice that never skirts around the issue of the gospel. He doesn't preaching the gospel. The message is still the same. Verse 29, "Being then God's offspring, we ought not to think that the divine being is like gold, silver, or stone, an image formed by the art or imagination of man. The times of ignorance God is overlooked, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent. Because he has fixed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by a man whom he has appointed. And of this he has given us assurance of all by raising him from the dead." He never backs down from the real issue there. He still preaches Christ, and that is his central message throughout all this. Following the way he works up to this is an interesting study by using our own poets, our own culture, come to this conclusion, but he never dances around the issue for repentance and submission to the person of Jesus Christ. We see in the last few verses there the response for this preaching in a foreign culture. Verse 32, "Now when we heard of the resurrection of the dead, some mocked, but others said, 'We will hear you again about this.' So Paul went out from their midst, but some men joined him and believed, among whom also were Manasseh the Ethiopian, and a woman named Maris, and others with him." So they were engaging a foreign culture or someone with similar beliefs. There's always going to be three responses, and Paul is out there. You get lost and completely rejected. They'll sit and think about it, and it may produce fruit later on. But we see